Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today, you will learn about Judith. Who is Judith? It's not somebody who's mentioned in the 66 books in the Bible, but there is a book of Judith that is in what is called the Apocrypha. And we will learn about her and about this book. So let's get right into it. What does the name Judith mean? Judith means Jewess, or a lady who is of Judah's ancestry. So a Jew, but a female person, a lady. But the name means praised. If you go into the root word of this 3067 number, you get this one here, which is referring to Yahudith. And Yahudith means in the Jewish language, or in Hebrew, in the Jewish speech. That's what it's referring to. But as you know, I like to go deep, deep, deep to the root of it. So I went further into this second word to find the root word. And again, you get to the word Jew, which is Yahudi or Yahudi. In Bantu, we say Yahudi, or Utah. And when you go into the root word of this third word, which is Jew, you find that the meaning is to praise, which is the name of Judah. So Judah is the male version of Judith, which is the female version. That's praised. That's what the word means. But let's go even deeper into it, because you can see there's another word in there. Where does it come from, right? So when we go deeper, now we start getting an understanding of where this is coming from. So you have the word yada, and it is to throw or to shoot or to cast something out. And it's like a motion you're making with your hands. And this motion is as if you're throwing something out, you're casting something out, and it's associated with the hand. That motion is to revere or to worship. So the way we see the word Judah meaning to praise, it's really the act of praising or worshiping with the hands. And that's where the name comes from. You can see the root word here of yada is yad. And yad is the meaning of which is hand, the hand. So the name Judah or Judith comes from the hand, and it's associated with praising. Okay. Now that we have the idea of what the word Judith means, or the name Judith means, let's talk about the book of Judith. In the book of Judith, we're going to see two major themes. And the first one is that there's an invading Assyrian army threatening Isolele. And that is from chapter 1 to 7. And from chapter 8 to 16, we see the faithful hand, the faithful female hand, Judith, leading Isolele to victory. That's the major oversight of what that's the major outline of what we're going to see here. Now, before we get into this detail, it's good to have the right context in your mind. So I'm going to shed some more light on who are these people called the Assyrians, for example, and who are some of the other characters we're going to see mentioned, like Syrians. Are they the same people as Assyrians? Let's take a look. So here I have three charts. I know it's busy. This is the name Assur. It also is the same as Assyria. This is the second son of Shem. The name means a step. So when we're talking about the invading Assyrian armies, we are saying the armies of Ashur, the second born of Shem, are invading the children of Isolele, which is down here. This is Jacob, Isolele. And then Jacob's people are being invaded by the children of Ashur. Okay, just to give you an idea of that. Now, there's another name that we see here. And this is Syria. Syria is Aram. Who is Aram? Aram is the fifth born of Shem. Just to draw a distinction, the fifth born of Shem, that is Aram. He is also called Syria in the scriptures. In fact, most of the times they use the name Syria. They don't use the name Aram. Of course, your guess is as good as mine as to why they do that. By now, you all know the tricks of the enemy. Okay, now that we got that understanding, let's talk a little bit about what happens during this invasion of the Assyrian army when they're threatening. So I'll quickly just give you bullet points, and then I'll highlight some scriptures or some texts to give you an idea of what's going on here. So the first thing that we notice here is that Nebuchadnezzar, in the text, it calls him Nebuchadnezzar, but it's Nebuchadnezzar, same character we see in the Bible. He's planning war against Arphaxad, okay? Some of you might be wondering who is Arphaxad. We'll get into the discussion later, but you may have seen him on the chart that I just displayed in the table of nations. That's in chapter 1. Nebuchadnezzar is planning a war against Arphaxad. Then, what do we see next? The Assyrians prepare to attack the West Country. Note that it's saying West Country, meaning that from wherever they live, they want to go westward and attack the people that are there. Okay? So those people who are being attacked live west of the Assyrians, who is also called Ashur, excuse me. Then we get introduced to a character, I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Holofernes. This is a captain of an army of these Assyrians. He is quite a general, and he goes devastating the countries to the west of Assyria or Ashur. Then we see the coastal cities. It's important that we're saying coastal cities because if those are Israeli people being attacked, they live by coastal cities. And there are several coastal cities that submit to Holofernes or Holofernes. If they're not Isolele, they are next to Isolele because after they're attacked, we see this group of people, Assyrians, wanting to go and attack the Israelites, Isolele. Then you finally have Holofernes invading the land of Isolele. That is in chapter 3 through 9. In chapter 4, Isolele start fortifying their country. They go out into the mountains. They take positions of the higher ground. They alert everybody. They tell them, be on guard. These guys are coming. It's a mighty army. At some point, the army of Holofernes with their Syrians is 120,000 men and 12,000 on horseback. It was huge. It was huge, They were the empire that ruled most of the earth at that time, Nebuchadnezzar's empire. So the Israelites are afraid, they're fortifying their country, and they also pray for protection. They can see damage is coming. Then there's a character called Archeo. Archeo goes to Holofernes and tells him, hey, let me give you the history of these people you want to invade. These people called Isolele. If they're sinning, you'll be able to go and defeat them. But if they're not sinning against their God, think twice because their God is something else. He's going to take you out. You won't be able to get victory over them. And Holofernes will not have any of that. So he actually hands over his advisor, Archeo, to the Israelites. They bind him and go and dump him in the land of the Israelites. So the Israelites come and pick him up, and he tells them what the Assyrians want to do. And then the Assyrians come and they besiege Betulia, which is a town or an area in Israel. So once they besiege Bethulia, this is where Judith lives. They besiege it and they actually target the sources of water. So the Isolele people, the Israelites, start dying of thirst. And in comes the story of Judith from chapter 7. But let me highlight, these are some scriptures that I want to, or some texts that are from these chapters here, especially chapter 1 and 2. I want to show you those texts before we talk about what Judith did. Notice that I highlighted names like Nineveh. You've probably heard the story of Nineveh with Jonah. Arphaxad, that name, which is in that table of nations that I was just showing you before. Then we have Ekbatane. When I saw this term, it sounds like bata, which is to stop in a lot of Bantu languages, just like we bata work, we stop work on the Sabbath. But it says, and it built in Ekbatane walls around about stones hewn 3 cubits. So the wall in that town that was called prevent or stop, that name is quite a Bantu name, if you ask me. Anyway, then we have Nebuchadnezzar. He made war with King Arphaxad. Okay? We're talking about the Euphrates. I hope by now when you see the word Euphrates, you're not thinking somewhere east of Arabia, but you're thinking West Africa. That's what I was thinking. The Tigris, this is a river that you can still find in some maps. It spreads around present-day Ethiopia all the way to Egypt. Might be the Nile, might be the same river. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of the Assyrians. Those are the guys who are from the second born of Shem. And now this is very interesting. The king of the Assyrians, Nebuchadnezzar, sent unto all that dwelt in Persia, and to all that dwelt westward, and to those that dwelt in Cilicia. If you remember, when Paul was taken in the New Testament, when Paul was taken to Rome and he was mistaken by a captain for an Egyptian, he said, I am a Jew from Cilicia. And this is the same Cilicia that the king of the Assyrians, Nebuchadnezzar, is sending messages to. That same town, that same area, and Damascus, and the sea coast. He solely lived along the sea coast. Okay? Then we have other mention of Carmel. The story of Elijah. Brother Nick can talk to us about where he thinks Carmel is. I think we might have done, I don't know if we did a presentation on that, but we're talking West Africa, the area of Namibia and places like that. Higher Galilee, we just had a session on Galilee. You can look at the videos. We're talking Southern Africa here and both sides of the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. Anyway, I can go on and on, but you see other names here, Egypt, Ethiopia. This is to give you an idea of where your mind should be thinking of in terms of context. Here is that Syria that we talked about, son of Shem, whose name is also Aram. Okay, so that's just some background. Now, I went in and pulled in some videos that we had done in the past. And these are some of the things that you see in those videos. This is a map of Africa. It's zoomed in. But to the right, this is the River Nile. To the right of the River Nile, you see Babylon. This marks the area where Nebuchadnezzar had set up his empire. Here, to the east of the River Nile, you see Ammon. Ammon is mentioned, I believe, even in this book of Judith, if I'm not wrong. So context-wise, if they're going west to invade all those cities from here. So they're going west into Africa, farther and farther into Africa. This is from the book of Jubilees, chapter 23. It talks about the land that was divided to the different sons of Noah. I will not go into all the details, but here it says in purple, in the middle of the screen. And for Aram, there came forth the fourth portion, all the land of Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now, we just talked about where the Euphrates is and where the Tigris is. If Aram was getting that piece of land between that, this is, in my view, we are talking about in Africa. There is a map that somebody in this channel here, How Can I Be Free, put together a sketch of this. And I believe they're pretty accurate. They're showing Aram would be in this area because it's west of this territory. He was given this west of the Tigris and east of the Euphrates. This is where Arphaxad was, Ashur, who is Assyria. Hence, that's where Babylon was, that same area. And then you have Elam, and then he's wondering whether that's where Lud was. So context-wise, just have that in mind. Okay, now let's talk about what Judith did after they had been held, they had been besieged in Bethulia. What happens at this point? So Judith is a widow, and she's been widowed for over 3 years, and she realizes they're about to be taken down, her and all the people of Isolele. So she reaches out to some of the elders in the city, and they talk about, she tells them, hey, allow me to go and, talk to the enemy. And if the Most High is with me, he'll give us victory. But I cannot tell you what I'm going to do. I'll tell you after I'm done. And the elders tell her, okay, may the Most High be with you. So she goes to the camp of the enemy and meets Holofernes, or Holofernes, however you say his name. And Judith explains why she's come there. She tells some very sweet stories, and the guy believes her. And they accommodate her together with her maid, and she stays there for a few days. And while she's staying there a few days, Holofernes decides to have a feast, a party. And by the way, Judith is extremely beautiful. And she has got the best words. She'll talk to you and you will just want to listen to her all day long. So in addition to her beauty, she's got the brains and she's got the Most High behind her. And she basically is pleasing to the eye of most men around her, especially here, Holofernes, the captain. So Holofernes invites Judith to a party, and he gets drunk, and Judith pulls out a sword. They call it something funny in the Old English. I think they call it a falchion or falchion. She pulls out a sword and beheads Holofernes, the captain of the army or the general. She takes the head of Holofernes back to Bethulia, her city in Isolele, in Jerusalem. And the Israelites are so happy, they cannot believe it, that a woman actually went and killed the captain of the army of the Assyrians. And so they get very emboldened and inspired, and they go and chase all the Assyrians who are besieging them. And they chase them away, and they get victory. And now they start praising Judith. And they even compose songs and poems, and Judith creates a song of praise to the Most High for the victory that they've been given. Remember, the Assyrians had been wiping out everybody to their west. And now when they got to Isolele, they couldn't go past them. Isolele, by the power of the Most High, gave them this victory. And so there's celebration in Jerusalem. And Judith's later life takes place, and she is honored from then on, as captured in this book of Judith, until she dies. Let me highlight some few scriptures or some few texts from the book of, from these chapters here, chapter 8 through 16. So here I am highlighting when she was talking to the elders, she's telling them, therefore now, I'm sorry, here, the elders in Solele are telling her, you pray for us because you're a godly woman. And the Most High will send us rain to fill our cisterns so that we stop fainting and dying. This is when they've been besieged and all their water sources are not accessible to them. Look at her response. She says, hear me, and I will do a thing which shall go throughout all generations to the children of our nation. She already knows that she's going to do something and she's going to have the victory, right? And she says, you shall stand this night in the gate, and I will go forth with my waiting woman, and within the days that you have promised to deliver thy city to your enemies, the Most High will visit Isolele by my hand. But don't ask me what I'm going to do. I will not tell it to you. Okay? So they tell her, go in peace, and the Most High be with you. What I found very important here was that they were asking her to pray so that they get water. The immediate problem in front of them was the water, because people are dying. That's a matter of life and death. But her approach was, now I'm going to ask for the Most High to give us safety as a nation and victory from these enemies who are encroaching around us. And she was speaking by faith of what perhaps she had already been shown or what she believed the Most High could do for her. And so she told them, I'm going to do something by my hand, but with the Most High's assistance. Food for thought for us to be thinking about as we deal with our day-to-day challenges. What's your water? What can you do with your hand? I'm not calling you to violence, no. But don't despise what you have or what you have been shown. The insights the Most High gives you are important. O Lord God of my father, Simeon, that's how she prayed. She knew her ancestry. Even if her name is similar to Judah, she's not from the tribe of Judah. She's from the tribe of Simeon. And she knows her ancestry, and she knows the gifting of her ancestry, to whom you gave a sword to take vengeance of the strangers. So she's calling upon the same gifting of her ancestor, Simeon. She's calling to the Most High. She's not calling to her ancestor. Don't let people accuse us of praying to our ancestors. No, we are calling to the Most High, just like her, for the giftings given to us through our ancestors. And she is not afraid to say that she is a widow. And she pleads as a widow because she knows the Most High treats widows in a different way. Okay? Now, I'll not touch on everything in here, but I'll highlight some things that were mentioned here that caught my eye. For example, the top of Zion. This is Zion. This is Zion over here. Okay? And she addresses the Most High as, you are the Most High of all power and might, and there is none other that protected the people of Isolele but you. Always remember that no one else protects us but him. Let's look at some final scriptures here, or texts. So this is when Holofernes took great delight in Judith, and he drank more wine than he had drunk at any time in one day since he was born. This is before Judith slays him. She actually prays because she notices she's alone in the room with him and he is drunk, he is asleep. She prays and says, "Oh Lord God of all power, look at this present upon the works of mine hands for the exaltation of Jerusalem. For now is the time to help your inheritance and to execute your enterprises to the destruction of the enemies which are risen against us." Then she came to the pillar of the bed, which was at Holofernes' head, and took down his sword, Phoshion, from thence, and approached his bed, and took hold of the hair of his head, and said, "Strengthen me, O Tatanzambi of Isolele, this day." And she struck him twice upon his neck with all the might, and she took away his head from him. She assassinated him. She killed him. The captain of the army of these guys. Anyway, we can get into the details of all that. I hope you have gotten an overview of what this book is about. I invite you to go read it in detail if you haven't, and engage us in the comment section. And now let's get into some more discussion. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share if you find this content helpful.